Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode is once again brought to you by our friends at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. We welcomed Paul Tremblay to the podcast. He is a best-selling Bram Stoker and British Fantasy Award-winning author of books such as Survivor Song, Cabin at the End of the World, Head Full of Ghosts, horror movie, and the upcoming middle grade novel, Another. But before you listen to this episode, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all those places. You can subscribe, rate, review over on Apple or Spotify, as well as anywhere you find your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube for a video portion of this podcast, as well as capesandtights.com for all kinds of reviews and more podcasts and things like that. But this is Paul Tremblay, best-selling author of books such as Horror Movie and the upcoming Another, right here on the Capes and Tights podcast. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Paul. How are you today?
Thank you, Justin. Good. Yeah, sitting out in the beautiful weather.
Yeah, in New England,
it
changes everywhere. You know, I live in Maine. You're in Massachusetts, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so it was funny because last week it was like 98 degrees on like Tuesday, and then like Sunday came about and it was like, or Saturday came about, it was like 57 or something like that. And I was just like, you can't get anything in New England here. It's like it changes in a heartbeat. But but it's someone's birthday today, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is my birthday. Another year added to the pile.
Exactly. Which is funny because our buddy Paul Eaton, who owns Galactic Comics and Collectibles, also named Paul, is also his birthday's today.
Okay.
So happy birthday to Paul there.
Happy
It's like a special
Paul
Day for the people out there. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat it with us and so on. But yeah, so let's just start off a little bit, Paul. Like, what made you decide you wanted to become an author?
No, I very much just sort of like fell into it. It was not like, well, it wasn't like I was a kid and I dreamed of writing stories. And you have, if people are not watching it on YouTube or something, you have a Celtics jersey, Nate Archibald in the background.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, I dreamed of being Larry Bird. I didn't do much toward that other than just spend hours in my backyard by myself shooting baskets. But in my late, I'll try to make this quicker. My last year of college, because I was a weird math humanities major, and humanities was just a hodgepodge of stuff. Well, one of the last classes I ever took, second semester senior year, was like an English 101 or Lit 101. But the stories you read in that class, like, oh, I didn't, like Joyce Carol Oates' Where Have You Going, Where Have You Been? And there was Greasy Lake by T.C. Boyle too. Anyway, I'll never forget, because when I read those, it was like, oh, I didn't know people wrote things like this. And I really hit it off the professor. He was cool. He was big into punk, so he let me write my papers comparing it to music. Like I still remember, I don't remember the paper, but I think the paper I wrote for Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been? I compared it to Jane's Addiction's Ted Just Admit It, like the use of violence, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so when I went off to grad school, I fell in love with reading because it was like right after that. And then after a couple of years, I just had this weird itch to try writing a story. I was also trying to learn how to play guitar. So it was both for much of the mid to late 90s. I was messing around with both very much a hobbyist, but then I figured I was a better writer, unfortunately. So then I just stuck with it. It was just like a long, slow, I was patient with it, sort of process.
Absolutely. You got a book, excuse me, a book coming out this summer, but you're about a year now. We're just over a year right now since Horror Movie hit the shelves. The paperback version of it comes out this summer, so that's really kind of cool. And you had the Independent Bookstore Day version of it, which was green, which was really cool. And for all of us people who were obsessed with collecting books and things like that, I had to buy that too. So it was a whole thing. I was like, I got to my house and I'm like, why did I do? I know why I did this, but like, why did I do this? No, and so it was pretty cool. But yeah, so how's it been? Like, so you're a year into this Horror Movie book. Obviously it takes you a while to get these things on the shelf, and then they're out for a year, and people buying it, bestseller, things like that. How's it been now? Now we're a year later after this book's been out.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because now, like at this point, I've written 2 full novels since that book has come out, and I'm about to start a third. So, in a lot of ways, it feels very far away. Um, and joking, not joking, but like you mentioned, the different types of horror movie. I think my publisher is trying to take advantage of my readers. Thank you, my readers. But like even like the trade paperback is going to be really cool. It's going to have like film strip, sprayed edges
Yeah.
stuff. So anyway, sorry. If anyone else feels like they're forced to buy another one, you don't have to. Uh, yeah,
But it's cool though, because it does add that whole aspect to it. Is like there are to me it was, I have one displayed, like I have one on
yeah,
the shelf that's like I like leaning up, and that's the green one. Then you have one on the shelf that, it's one of those things. I mean, I'm a comic book collector as well, so it's like you
yeah,
have the covers that make the difference and so on and so forth. But it also gives people the opportunity who didn't purchase the book in the first place. There's an incentive to
right.
maybe like, oh, this is the reason why I waited, because this sprayed edges on this paperback is actually way cooler than the hardcover or whatever
Yeah.
it may be. At least they didn't. Blood on Her Tongue came out with the blood on the spray on the edges and the regular version, so like you had to
Mm,
pick between the two.
right.
And I know that there's the hardcover had like for your book, how a horror movie had red sprayed, right?
Yeah,
And
the
there,
first printing
yeah,
did.
it's
Yeah,
first printing them. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's really cool. I think it's cool to have that different options out there. But yeah, for the $30 a book, it does get a little expensive.
yeah,
At least the paperback's cheaper. How about that? There you go.
yeah, for sure. Thank you. No,
But,
I mean, so like a year later, I don't know, I'm in a weird place that I never dreamed I would be, and like that I've written like a whole bunch of novels. I'm up to like
mhm.
10 or 11. I don't know, because like, when you f fall in love with reading, it's like, oh, I have like, Stephen King has written all these books, and you have favorites and not favorites. And it's weird to think that there are people out there who have favorites and non-favorites of mine. Mostly non-favorites, probably. Uh, but I'm very proud of Horror Movie. Like it felt like, I don't know, like when you feel like you've written a good book,
Mhm,
like with the passage of time. So like,
mhm.
obviously I feel really good about A Head Full of Ghosts and The Cabinet at the End of the World. I feel good about all my books, but I was like, oh, I felt like with Horror Movie, it's like, just trying to prove that I could do it again kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily the best judge of my own work, but that book felt good. It felt like, okay, I proved I could do it again. So, it starts all over again with the next book,
Mhm.
obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it's one of those. It's a thing with publishing where you have to like obviously promote. You heavily promoted horror movie when it came out last summer, and then you kind of like not take a break from it, but like you just sit back a little bit and you work on your next novels and things like
Yeah.
that. Then you're starting to promote the next book, which is another, and then you also have to promote promoting this the paperback version of horror movie. But there's also the audiobook. So I read the advanced copy of horror movie
Yeah.
last year before it was published, and then I was like, oh yeah. Well, then I get closer to talking to you, and I was like, you know what? I want to read it again, but let's listen to audiobook this time. And I'll tell you right now, that's a complete like normally audiobooks to me and written books are similar. Like they're
Yeah.
just okay, it's a different way of intaking the novel. When it's like a cast of characters doing a thing like horror movie on
Yeah.
audiobook, it's an entirely different experience, which is highly recommended to people, honestly, right now. It was so cool to just take it in a different, it was like reading a whole nother book again. It was really cool.
Nice. No, thank you. And yeah, they really knocked it out of the park. And none of that was my idea.
You don't want to
I
take
think my
credit?
no, no, my only suggestion was like, you probably should have like, a male narrator for the Thin Kid and
Mm,
a woman narrator, female narrator for Cleo's
mm.
screenplay,
Yep.
right? Or yeah, Cleo.
Yeah.
I always switch back and forth in my
Yeah.
head
Yeah.
because Valentina and Cleo are named after
Yeah.
my daughter's friends, but their
Oh,
names are slightly different. So sometimes I slip out the real name. Not that it's a
that's
big
a big
deal,
deal.
but
But yeah.
anyway. Yeah, no, like I normally don't listen to my audiobooks from start to finish. I might dip
Mhm,
in just to hear what it sounds like, but I did listen to this one because it was a lot of fun. I felt like, like as you described, like it felt like something different.
mhm.
Um, and I don't like, so it's funny when it first came out, like I was getting messages from randos being like, oh, they put out an audiobook with mistakes on it. I'm like, no, it's purposeful. Like, because someone flubs a line, like when because they're
Yes.
doing like a live table reading for the screenplay.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's purposeful. Don't worry about it.
Well, it's a different thing, and I do read about I even books that I'm reading right now. I read kind of hybrid. I have the physical print copy, and I listen to the audiobook because my son goes to school about a half an hour away,
Uh-huh.
and so I drive him to school, drive home. So there's a chunk of time there that I feel like I'm wasting, and
Right.
so listening to an audiobook and so on and so forth. But like there's something to be said about it done right like this. Like this, it's a different. Like I said, it's a different experience. It's a different way of intaking something, and I listen to a lot of them. So it's kind of funny how you mentioned that it's the mess ups. It took me. I'm like, wait, did they just say that line over again? I'm
Yeah.
surprised. And then it reminded me of when I listened to Kevin Smith's audiobook, his biography, And there was moments where he stopped in the middle of the book and just made comments on the thing that he was reading, which was not in the book. So
Oh,
again, you get this whole other experience of like it didn't happen all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Like everyone, like maybe like 5 times throughout the entire book, he said a comment, a quick sentence about what he just said, and I was like, it's a different way. It's not only just a different way of reading the book, but it's also a different experience. And I think that a horror movie having all those different people talking made for I guess a new experience. And again, you got me again because I had to buy the audiobook.
yeah. Oh my God. Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So
No,
I'm going to be
yeah,
sending you the bill in the mail. Yeah, no, it's true. It's a different way of doing it. I didn't, there's people who obviously think it's not the same or can't pay attention or whatever it may be. But this, I think, even if you can't pay attention to an audiobook, this might force you to because there's more going on. There's
right.
some sound effects. There's again the
Yeah,
special features of flubbing the line and things like that. It's really cool.
yeah. No, I get it. I mean, I listen to audiobooks too. I usually have a hard time with fiction, just
Mhm.
because if I space out, I feel like I've lost something. Whereas if I do a lot of nonfiction that way, I feel like if I space out for a second, I'm not losing as much as I did in fiction. But
Yeah.
there are some books that do work in fiction, like Carolyn Kepnes's You books.
Mhm.
Just because of the voice and it's this weird, fun first person. I think those are so fun to listen to, and I don't space out on those. But
Well,
something that's
yeah.
like really dense, like this needs to be like for me, it needs to be read,
Mhm.
like as a book.
Yeah, and there's also the way that you go about it. And so I recently had a conversation with Christopher Golden when he was up here visiting about how I listened to his audiobook for Nightbirds, and I said I loved it, enjoyed it very much. But I was like, my one thing was there was a selection of a female character and a male character that read for two female roles and two male roles, or multiple of each. And so the only thing I would say is anybody listening to it or reading the book for the first time, read the book because that to me kind of took me like, wait a second, who are they
Yeah,
talking to? And you kind of lost because they were having the same voice. And
right,
so it was like, it kind of like the females were talking to the female, and so on and so forth. So to me, it was like a little confusing, but I was like, read the novel first of all, because it's phenomenal. But other than that, like I said, read the physical copy, print copy, because I think you're getting more out of it. You can keep track of things in your mind,
right.
unless you're really good. Like I said, I don't know. Some people are better at listening to audiobooks than others. I don't
Yeah.
know. But this was done well. That's what my whole point to that whole long-winded conversation here was that the audiobook for horror movie was done well,
Thank you.
and it's really
Yeah.
cool. It's a whole, like I said, a whole nother experience. But you've written, Cabin into the World. We got, horror movie, Paul Bear's Club, a whole head full of ghosts. All these different books you've written. Now you're jumping into a different age range. What was the impetus to writing another in this middle grade age range? Again, it's middle grade, but really for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, a part of it was because of the filming of Knock at the Cabin. I got to take a year sabbatical from school,
Mhm.
and I finished horror movie like 4 months before my deadline, because I had all this extra time, and then I just happened to have the idea for another. Like it
Mhm.
was a scene that just got stuck in my head where an old man shows up to this lonely boy's house and has a burlap sack, and inside the sack he opens it, and this is like weird clay mannequin looking kid, that can move but has no facial features, but like will sculpt stuff on his face. I was like, oh, that's really weird, and it kept nagging me, and that's usually the sign that, oh, I do want to write. I want to write it. Because I'm sure, like, most writers will get all sorts of crazy ideas, but me, the test is, does it continue to stick with me? Because I think everyone's
Mhm.
excited initially. It's like, oh, this is new. What's this? But if I find myself thinking about it, weeks and weeks later, and at random moments, it's like, okay, that means I think, I can spend a year writing this.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it grew up from there, and just because it was a 12-year-old protagonist, writing it from his point, not first person, but from his
Yeah.
point of view, I thought, oh, maybe this is a younger person's book. I wasn't 100% sure, because I'm certainly no expert. But a friend did send me Kenneth Oppel's The Nest, which is a
Yeah.
wonderful middle grade novel, very scary and just beautifully written. So that was like, okay, I didn't know you could do it that way. So honestly, I feel like I didn't really approach the writing of this book any other differently than my other books. Maybe I dialed back the vocabulary, whatever my vocabulary happens to be. I mean, certainly swearing, that's part of the vocabulary.
Yeah.
So I, dialed that back. But honestly, like, it's a question I get asked a lot. It's like, and I feel like I'm disappointing people by saying I don't feel like I really approached it differently. It was just this is what the story needed, so I tried to give
Mhm.
the story what it needed.
I think it's great having this middle grade, tag to it, but it's because you can give it to the middle grade, audience. But that doesn't mean that it's just for middle. I mean, it was creepy to me. Like I'm almost 40 here, and I just like to me,
Yeah,
I was like, this is not. This is, same thing I've always mentioned to Adam Caesar about his books, Clown in the Cornfield and
yeah,
Influencer, and things like these. Like they're like young adult, but it's like the end. You know what I mean? Like it's like the like one
yeah.
more swear word in it or one more thing would have pushed it over into an adult novel. And it's a similar thing I feel like with this. It's like it's in that middle grade age range, but it's like it might be towards the end of that middle grade if you think about it. Because again, like I said, it creeped me out, and to
Well,
me, I'm like, this
thanks.
is friggin'
Yeah,
this is. But so did half of R.L. Stein's books still creep me out. So it's like one
yeah,
of those things that like. Just because there maybe there's some themes, or there's not sexuality, or there's
right.
not those things that are not in this book, so that makes it that middle grade. But it's still creepy. It's still a horror story. It's still
Well,
one
thanks.
of those ones that like, I mean, if they made it into a movie, I would want it to be more a little bit more adult. I'll tell you that much. But like other than that, but it was like I said, it was a creepy read. It was eerie. And it did make me think of R.L. Stein books. I don't know if you want to be compared to R.L. Stein, but it had that goosebumps aspect to it,
Yeah.
that creepiness of a young person and something weird happening
Mm.
in their lives. And so it was really cool to see that and read this. And Chuck Wendig just did that too with horror movie. No, it's a horror movie? No, it was your horror movie.
Monster movie?
Yes, monster movie.
Yeah,
Thank you. I was just putting the book away on the shelf a second
yeah,
ago. I was trying to put these books away on a shelf, and I'm like, oh, this is a cool book. I forgot about this
yeah,
book. But yeah, same idea, where it's like Chuck's obviously written a bunch of great books that are made
yeah.
for adults, but then grab that middle grade age range, and same thing with you with this other book. It's really cool to see that. But yeah, so was it just you wrote the book and it ended up being this age range, or did you have to cut some things out that were like, okay, this is maybe for an adult?
No, I didn't cut a thing out. I wrote it. Sent it to my agent. It's like, yeah, it's probably middle. By the time I finished, it's like, I guess this is middle grade then because it features a sixth grader essentially.
Mm,
Um, I didn't know. I thought, oh, because of Chuck and for a few other people,
mm.
Allie, Mellon.
Yeah,
I'm going to butcher her last name.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like, oh, middle grade horror must be doing well. And then everyone was like, no, middle grade's bad. Like it's not doing well. I'm like, oh, okay.
then why are people
Well,
doing this?
whatever. I have this. Let's see if we can sell it.
Yeah,
Um, no, really, it's funny. When it was being pitched, the first we pitched it to within. So William Morrow's my adult publisher, and
yeah.
that's an imprint of HarperCollins. And
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to stay in house.
Hmm.
Um, and so my adult editor suggested this amazing editor, Rosemary, uh, from Quill Tree Press,
Yeah.
and the initial pushback with the sales folks was like, oh, does it, we want you to take the pandemic stuff out of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was like, no, like I'm not doing that. Like the whole book is, I mean, it's very much in the background, but
Yeah.
thematically it's
It's
about what it
there.
felt
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the loneliness, the isolation. It's like it's, I'm not taking that out. So luckily, they still made an offer for it because I wasn't going to take it out. I would have gone elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, the publishing experience with Quill Tree and Rosemary has been amazing. She was so helpful, um, in making this a better book. And
Yeah.
we got Sam Wolf Connolly to do illustrations that are just absolutely gorgeous. Especially in the hardcover. I think they're printed at like a higher resolution than the ARC. Not
Mm.
trying to force you to buy the hardcover, which is only $20, by the way.
Yes. Well,
Anyway,
that's the other benefit of
yeah,
like I said, that young adult and below age range is usually their cheaper books too, which is really
right, yeah,
nice.
yeah. It's
We're cool.
smaller length for me. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
47,000 words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. It was easy. And it's one of those things that mean, is it one of those like not that your publisher would have done this, but like if you were to write something different, I just talked to Philip Fracassi about Third World Time Travel, and they almost wanted him to put a different name on it. They wanted him
yeah,
to write under a ghost name or a different name, a pseudonym, because the like we write horror books, like people, this is a sci-fi, book. It's not going to be the same audience. He's like, no, that's my name. I want to
yeah,
write under my name. It's like had this name my entire life. I want to use this
right.
name, and so the same thing. Your Paul Tremblay is written right at the top of it, and so like it does say to people who are fans of yours to go say, "Hey, that's a Paul book. I want to read that book." But does it scare away people potentially that are like know what your books are about and how they can be, be darker and more adult to see that this book will be on the shelf? I mean, I know it will be in a different section in the
Yeah.
bookstore, but seeing your name so big at the top, does it like scare people away, you think?
Uh, Probably, maybe. Like, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean,
Yeah. Well, obviously it hasn't come out
like,
yet,
yeah,
so
yeah, there are
we'll
plenty of people who don't like my books. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, but no, like I'm definitely with Phil. I mean, I think Frank,
yeah.
some of that is just the bad side of publishing and sort of
Yeah.
the frankly dumb part of publishing. Um, but realistically, in the back of your head, you're like, well, if this just suddenly starts going into the tank, then maybe, I try with the pseudonym. There's no
Yeah.
shame in that.
Yeah.
Um, but like Phil, at the same time, I want to write what I want to write and then try to figure out how to publish it afterwards. So,
Yeah.
I've been very sort of lucky and fortunate so far.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, it's I've seen publisher or authors who write young adult and middle grade sometimes take the book, like a copy of the book in the bookstore, and then walk to the adult section and slide it in next to their name on purpose, so that those because like I said, a lot of these books are for middle grade, like they go
Yeah,
as low as middle grade. But really, if you're 65 years old, you could read another and understand it and have a good time and experience with it. So
yeah.
sometimes they're like, oh, I'll just throw it in there because it's both. It's middle grade, but it's also for the people, older people as well. But yeah, I'm glad you touched on the pandemic of it all, and I am seeing this more reading books, and obviously now that we're like not separated, but we're separated enough now from the initial 2020.
From the initial, yeah.
Yeah, that people are starting to use it as a theme. Stephen King's done it a couple times recently, and so on. I like how you used it, but you didn't like. It's not one of those books. It's not like the book is a pandemic book, and that's what I think is really cool about this book is it has like it has a theme in it. It's a plot device to help move the story along and it set the story up, but it's not like a focus on it. And this is this the amount of the pandemic you wanted to put in this book from the first place, or was this like I said, you they didn't want you to really have it in the first place? Did you tone it down
Yeah.
at all, or
No, no, did
okay?
not. Yeah, no, did not. No, I mean, so like when I mentioned that the scene that started the
Yeah,
book,
yeah,
I had to figure, I was like, well, why would this 12-year-old kid even consider having like this weird clay playmate, in a somewhat
yes,
realistic
yes,
way? I knew obviously we're dealing with the supernatural and stuff like
yeah,
that. Um, and almost right away, I was like, oh, like he's feeling isolated and lonely. And that was just so ratcheted up, obviously, with during the first couple of years of the
hmm
pandemic. So for me, it was about discovering who Casey was.
hmm
So here's this boy who was cyberbullied while he was um, hybrid learning, they called it. Remember, like half the kids were
yes,
in, half the
yes,
kids were out.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that fun time.
yes,
Yeah, so no, in a lot of ways, the book became the book I didn't know I needed to write, just dealing with the emotional stuff of
hmm
having been a teacher and a parent and around so many students who struggled during those first 2 years. So again, it's very hopeful. It's definitely not didactic. I can't tell you if it's
yes,
successful or not, but
yeah. It's one of those things.
it's
Once it
maybe
hits the shelves, you
mentioned in
find
like
out.
it's maybe mentioned in like 5% of the book, maybe
Yeah.
less. I mean, the bulk of the book takes place in Casey's house during a school vacation week.
hmm hmm
Um, but yeah, I mean, so that's why I said no, because like no, there is no story without this. I mean, publishing has this weird thing where they're afraid of like quote unquote aging stories or aging
Yes.
books. I don't know if it's I think it might even be more intense with young adult readers, which I get because maybe like middle grade readers now don't have this, 4 or 5 years ago for them.
Yeah.
It's different than, our memory of it. But I don't know. I think it's absurd. I think you just drive yourself crazy. Like what is timeless fiction? Someone described
It's
that to me. Is it,
exactly.
where's the cutoff? Was it pre-cell phone?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, one of the funny parts of this book is, one of the challenges was I had to
Yeah.
describe for middle readers, for young
Yes.
readers, what the hell a rotary phone was.
Yes.
Because a rotary phone ends up playing an important part. Like the mom buys an antique
Yeah.
rotary phone. And I watch actually a lot of fun YouTube videos of parents like just putting a rotary phone and seeing how
Mhm.
long it took their kid to figure out how to use it.
It's a funny
Yeah,
thing. It's
yeah.
and
So
actually they use
there,
that in the
yeah.
Adam Caesar's Clown in the Cornfield movie
Oh, okay. I
adaptation.
haven't seen
They
it yet.
use
Yeah,
that they're in a room and they're trying to there's something's happening and they're trying to there's like these two young teenagers trying to use a
yeah,
phone and it's a rotary phone. They're like, how the hell did we use this thing?
yeah,
I just laughed and like, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't, maybe I used one. I'm 39, so I probably
yeah.
had used, I know how to use one. And I don't think we ever had one in my house. I
Right.
think we probably always had like a dial phone. But yeah, it's pretty funny. You have to explain what it is to someone because yeah, a middle grade person right now definitely isn't going to know off the
Yeah.
top of their head or not
Right.
every one of them what a rotary phone is. It's pretty
Sure.
funny.
Yeah. But again, like the whole idea is like if you do a good enough job with your story, like
Yeah.
first off, I'm not worried about what weird lobster humans are going to be reading 50 years from now.
hmm
I'm worried about like people reading it now,
Yeah.
and if you're lucky enough that people are reading it in the future, great. And if they are reading it in the future, and if you did your
Yeah.
job, they will understand what's going on because it's all part of where that book was set. So I think worrying about timeless fiction is, I'll be blunt and just say dumb.
Yeah, it's true. It's also the
Yeah.
invention of like where most of us are like, if I'm reading this book, if I'm reading Cabin at the End of the World, and I'm reading it, and I get to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't understand what that is. I have this thing that I just Google it and I
Yeah.
figure out what that is. So if like if I'm reading opening up another 50 years from now, I'm like, what's this pandemic they were talking about? I could just Google it and find out what it was about, and then they have my answer for me.
Right.
Also, hopefully not by 50 years from now there'll be another pandemic. So it might be like one of those things. Which pandemic are you talking about? No.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, timeless. It doesn't make. Yeah, there are certain things like if you talk to if I were to bring up my son's only 4, but like if I bring up my son, like, hey, 9/11, he's gonna be like, what is that?
Yeah.
And so there is this thing, but there are also some pinnacle big key points on our history timeline that like
Sure.
thing, and I feel like the pandemic, justifies a point on that timeline. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a humongous thing that happened. So
Oh,
I can understand
100%.
talking about like I don't know who won the World Series that year or something like that. Might be like
Yeah.
timing or dating your book in a weird way, but like this was a pretty big thing to happen.
Yeah. No, yeah, dumb is probably too mean, but we'll say misguided. How's that?
There you go, taking it back. There you go.
Yeah.
Dumb. No, I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna put that put that on the quotes there.
Yeah. Yeah. There you
Paul
go.
Tremblay thinks this is dumb. No, yeah, it made sense, and it made this book make sense too. Yeah, you feel for you feel for him at the very beginning of the book. Like obviously, we all lived through this. I was older than someone who's in school and doing this whole hybrid learning and
Yeah.
using it. I did use Zoom. I mean, we wouldn't be talking right now if it wasn't for the
Right.
invention of something like video conferencing and things like Zoom. But I didn't obviously have this hybrid learning. I hybrid worked and things like that. Like we had
Yeah.
meetings via Zoom and things like that, so you understood it. But I didn't have that, so you feel for the loneliness that he feels at the beginning of this book. But then by the end of the book, I was not going to spoil it, but like you also feel for him in a completely different reason, a different way. And you feel
Yeah.
for like what happens throughout this book. You go through kind of an emotional roller coaster in this, and you feel for the kid a long ways. I'm pretty sure that someone who's younger than me is going to feel even more because they're going to be like, "Oh, this is me. I can see myself in this book." But yeah, so now that you've done this, you've done this middle grade. Is this something that you feel like I've now obviously hasn't been released yet, so sales will figure into this. But do you feel like you have this itch to want to do it again, or is this like I did my middle grade, I'm moving on? Unless it sells, unless it's
Yeah.
a New York Times bestseller, obviously that's a different story because you might
Yeah,
be
I
forced
mean,
into it.
yeah. I have no plans, at least in the near future. I mean, never
Yeah.
say never, obviously, but no, I have another adult. I just finished an adult novel. I'm waiting on edits, so I'll have to work on that. And I have another adult novel due in May, so like all
Mhm.
energies will be devoted to those two books.
Middle grade obviously is a different age range. We've talked about multiple times on this podcast, but you did stops and you do reads and things like that for horror movie. You've done it for previous books where you did like a book tour. Are you doing anything for this book, or is it one of those things that the age range isn't really fit for that thing?
Yeah, no, we're doing a little tour.
Okay.
Like the first week, it's like Boston, Brooklyn,
Oh, nice.
Chicago, and Minneapolis. And
Mm,
Brooklyn, it's Books Are Magic. So some of the events are a little earlier. Uh, and I'm doing like the in conversation thing with other young adults slash middle
okay.
grade writers, which is really cool. The thing near Chicago, I think, is at a school. So I mean, that it's called Lit Palooza.
Oh, cool.
So I think it's just a whole bunch of, there'll be kids there, I assume.
Mm.
I'll try not to scare them too much. Yeah, so I mean that part of it's going to be fun. It's going to be different. Even though I've been a teacher my whole
Yeah.
professional life, it'll be kind of fun being the writer in front of young people instead of the scary math teacher. I'll just be the scary writer. Yeah.
Yeah, you're both. That's fine. Uh, yeah, it's cool. That I just yeah, it makes sense, and I did remember seeing that. Now I think on your social media, there's a post about the dates that you're doing
Yeah.
this book tour on it. I just didn't realize like yeah, it makes sense that some people might bring their parents, and that's another thing that's kind of cool. Is to me is like I just feel like at the right age, I could see myself reading this with my son,
Nice.
which is really cool. Or my daughter, she's 15 months, so it's a little bit longer for her.
Yeah.
My son's 4, so it's like
Okay.
he's getting up there. But it'd be kind of cool to see that thing where obviously if I couldn't read horror movie or A Head Full of Ghosts with my son for a long time, at
Sure.
least this one gives me the opportunity that I'd enjoy this book as well as my son would enjoy this reading this book at some point, which is kind of cool. And it's like one of the things is I obviously got introduced to your books not middle grade, and so
Yeah.
being able to have that share that experience was something similar I've been able to experience with other people. Philip Fracassi was one of them. My wife doesn't read horror books, but she was able to read Third World Time Travel, so it was like kind of a
Nice.
cool being able to share my passions or my favorite authors with other
Yeah.
people. And this would be an opportunity for parents of middle grade students or kids to read this book if you're a fan of horror books, as well as like you have your kid read along or read to them. I
Yeah.
don't know. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the plan. No. I need younger readers.
Yes.
No, I mean, some of my favorite memories as a parent is reading to my kids,
Mhm.
and um, unfortunately now, given who the author is, but reading Coraline to my daughter,
Yeah. Yes.
um,
Yeah.
and other things like that. We read all sorts of stuff. Yeah, to the point where Diary of a Wimpy Kid, of course. Or my daughter, she was always drawing on her legs. She's 20 now, but she had. Have you read those to your kid?
Yeah. Not
What
yet.
what's
No.
the? I can't remember the
He's
quote
seen the
unquote dumb
movies.
character's name.
I
Damn it.
read,
Anyway, one of the characters,
yeah.
not the smartest,
Yeah.
uh, not the smartest one. She had drawn on her ankle.
Yeah.
Some like when she was like 13, 14,
Mhm.
maybe. But I noticed I was like, oh, it's always there. She keeps redrawing it, and then like recently, she just admitted to me, she's like, Dad, that was a stick and poke. It's like great.
She like realized it that much. She keeps drawing it
Yeah,
on
yeah,
herself. No, no, the plan. He's seen the movies, like the animated movies that they had
yeah.
recently, and that's one of those things where we like put on TV and it comes up and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. And he has too many books in that first place, but at
Oh
some
yeah,
point, yeah,
they are
some
fun.
of
I
those
mean, I read
things,
like the earliest ones, and they're
yeah.
definitely fun. Yeah.
They're fun. It's cool. And again, that's the experience that I've always done. It's the things I've talked to other people about too, is about sharing passions with your kids. And I'm obviously a fairly new parent, but having a
Yeah, yeah.
4-year-old and a 15-month-old, is that some of the passions I have nowadays are not easily shared. I can say I like to read books and I like to read
Yeah.
comics, but the type of books and comics I'm reading, I can't really share with my son. So just the experience of reading with them will be fun
Yeah.
at some point. I do read like, here and there. And I've tried to like buy like the little golden books and some of that stuff. Some
Mhm.
of those are really hard to read, man. Like
Yeah.
some of them were not like they did not pay attention very well when they were actually writing some of these
You
kids'
got to get,
books.
there was a monster at the end of this book by
Yes,
Grover.
we have that one. They made a
Okay.
movie of it, and
Yeah.
there's a sequel to it or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just the original is all you need. Yeah.
yes, exactly. But actually, as a comic book writer or an editor, Steve Fox, who wrote the Super Mario Brothers golden book. And so I bought that, being like, "Oh, I want to support, writers." And
Yeah. Yeah.
some of it just he's like, "Dude, I don't know, man. I pumped that thing out because I didn't like it was one of those things that it didn't really matter
Yeah.
what was going on." He goes, and they cut pages out. They did this, that, the other thing. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
understand. At least this book is a professionally made, well, what people want to read another. But yeah, so you've done another now, or it's going to come out July 22nd.
Yep.
Bookstores everywhere. People should pre-order it, and I'm guessing it's going to come. Is it in that smaller format? Do you know? Do you have a copy of it right
It's
there, or
hard
is it like
to
a?
show the scale,
Yeah,
but
but
I
okay,
mean, vertically, it's probably
it's
the same size, but it's,
okay. It is thinner,
it's
yeah.
a smaller book, uh, but with some really groovy
The
illustrations.
artwork's awesome on the front too.
Yeah.
The cover. Oh, look at
Mhm.
that. See. That's beautiful, a little heart in there and stuff. Yeah, no, it's that's really fun to do that because I think that there's when I was younger, I had a problem with attention and reading, and so like I get to a point in a book, I read numerous books, the first like 3 chapters, and then never finished the book as a kid
Mhm.
because I get to a point where like I don't want to read this anymore, and I move on and do
Yeah.
something else or read the next book. I was like, I'm done with this book. Having something like the illustrations in these books and things like that helps with like cutting the book up a little bit too and looking at something different. And I
Right.
think that's a pretty cool feature. Not that that's exactly the reason why he did it, but like to me, it was breaking it up a little bit to have those illustrations in books. Some books when I was a kid that did it for me. So that's pretty cool that's in this book too as
No, for
well.
sure. I thought it was important. I was actually part of the negotiation.
Mm.
For us, I'd asked that we'd have some illustrations, and they didn't balk at it, which was great.
No, Paul, you cannot do that. I'm sorry. Illustrations do not belong in books. No,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. No, like I said, I think that I like it. We have a writer who's writing for the website now, too, Anna Rose Reads.
Mhm.
And so there's a few books that I've read and reviewed a little while back. And then since she's joined on contributing to the website, she's
Yeah.
actually got to the point now she's reading it too. So we have double reviews on our website of another,
Oh, cool. I
both
read
highly
hers.
acclaimed.
Hers
Yes. Yeah.
was super kind. I really appreciated it.
She's
Actually, she talked about how like adults could hopefully enjoy the book too. So, I
yes,
mean, no, I was very pleased. It was,
yes.
it's always gratifying. I don't read, I try not to read all my reviews. I
No,
certainly don't
don't.
read like, Goodreads or Amazon, but if it's in a
Don't.
newspaper or
Yeah.
something or,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or a website that,
Yeah.
a lot of people go to, then I'll dip in. But yeah, thank you, Anna. She
Yeah.
just actually posted a really cool drawing that she just did of a wolf, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. she's great, and it was kind of funny. I was like, oh yeah, there's certain books where I'm like, oh, it's great. And there's just sometimes you have two different points of view on it too, but the same like we had two different points of view in a sense, and two different reviews, but both the same outcome, which was it's really for anybody. Anybody can read this book
Thank you.
and get the
Yeah.
same a similar experience. I think you might have a different experience depending on how old you are, but it's a gratifying story and an eerie and kind of creepy story. But middle grade can read it, and again, if you're like in a nursing home and you want to read this book, I think you could read it pretty well. Like some of the
Yeah.
things you might not understand, the same reason why someone even younger than middle grade might not understand.
Yeah.
But like there's something to it, and I don't think that it skips a beat for your bibliography of books
Well, thank you.
that has it out there. The next one's gonna be an adult book though, right? Like we're
Oh
talking
yeah.
full on, and it's a typical Paul Tremblay book, or is this something weird?
NC-17. Yeah, no. Um, no. I
That's
mean, just R for
yeah.
swearing and
Yes, there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
violence and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
That's really cool. I guess it's a cool experience to have that. You've had a stack of books here. What's funny is my wife was at work and she texted me this is a couple months ago and she's like, "Have you heard of or read A Head Full of Ghosts?" And I was like, "Oh, that's Paul." I mean, she's read Cabin at the End of the World, so I
Oh,
was like,
cool.
"Oh, Paul
Yeah.
Tremblay." And she's like, "Oh, I just read the description of it. Someone told me about it, and it seemed like a book you'd like." I was like, "Oh, my wife knows me well. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank
Nice.
them." But yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, I've read it. It's fine. It's great. Don't worry about that." But yeah, so sometimes I'm always like, "Did you buy the book?" Please don't buy the book. I already have it. Don't,
Yeah.
because sometimes she's looking at my library. She's like, "I don't know what
No,
books
buy
you
the
have.
book. Buy it
Buy a
again.
book
I'm just
again.
kidding. Yeah.
Buy it on paperback. Buy it hardcover." No, but it's one of those thing. It was kind of funny how people can understand other people. I'm like, yeah, you know who I am. This is definitely a Paul Tremblay book.
Yeah.
And I was gonna meet you. I was actually gonna see you in Bangor when you were up in Bangor,
Oh,
Maine. Was a little while ago now.
yeah. Last October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But same reason why I didn't go to Massachusetts to Christopher Golden's Halloween thing was my son got sick.
Oh
And so
no.
like
Yeah.
at the same time I was like both two different events were like and it was funny because I think Joe Hill and Keith Rosen came around the time where it was like at the
I
beginning
think it
of
was the
that.
next day.
It was the next
It
day.
was the
That's what
very
it
next
was.
day. Yeah.
That's what it was. Was that the night before I was like, "Hun, let me just please go to this thing tonight." And I went to see Joe Hill and Keith Rosen. And then the
Nice.
next day was when he like couldn't go to school and all this other stuff. So it was like that night was the next night that
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, Jabron from Briar Patch was like, "Do you need me? Do you want me to get anything signed?" I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna go see him when he's down in Massachusetts in a couple weeks. I'll be fine." And then I
Yeah.
wasn't able to go to that because my son was still
Oh yeah.
sick. So I was like, "Oh gosh, this is so crazy." But yeah, it was pretty cool to be having you up here in Bangor. I now have lived in Newport. I moved to Newport,
Oh.
which is the home of our draft pick, Cooper Flagg,
Oh,
who's now
okay.
playing for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
Grew up in the 2 blocks from me here, so it's pretty cool to be that. I used to be down the street from Stephen King.
Yeah.
Now I'm down the street from
No,
Cooper
Cooper
Flagg's house.
flag. All right.
But yeah, it was pretty sad that I wasn't able to get to meet you. So I was like, oh, looking forward to this conversation to talk books and things like that with you because
Yeah.
big fan.
Thank you.
It's
Has
always
anyone
nice.
else talked about the weirdness of, Randall Flagg, Cooper Flagg, King? I mean, so close. I don't know.
No, but
Maybe
that should be it.
Cooper
Maybe
is
that's a
like
good one. Maybe that's a
secretly an evil person. I don't know.
well, his brother is going to be going to UMaine, Ace Fight,
Uh-huh.
and I work for Orono Brewing Company in Orono, and so it's kind of cool to have that ability to actually have all these different connections and things like that. They actually
Yeah.
someone on Google actually put Cooper Flagg's childhood home as a historical place. Like they actually added it. It's like the family moved away. Like
Come
when
on,
he moved,
Maine. Yeah.
yeah, when he moved when he went to Florida, they
Yeah.
moved to Florida to
Other
go to
day.
Mount
Okay.
Verde, and then I think they ended up in North Carolina because of Duke and stuff like that. So they don't even live up here anymore. But I was just laughing that it was like people, whoever lives in that house is gonna have like people driving by taking pictures. Not the same as Stephen King. Now
Not the
there's
same.
like
Yeah, probably not the
there
same.
that luckily Stephen King lives on or lived on West Broadway, which is a wide street, so people can
Yeah.
park on the side of the road, do what they want, and it doesn't interfere. It's a small little town. Please stay away from their house.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Stephen King's home was pretty cool to be in, and as a horror fan and all that stuff. And then you came up and visited, and you were at the Penobscot Theater, I believe, right?
Yeah,
You
it was
did
a
it
really
at
cool
the theater. It
space.
was
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah, talk about horror and all that stuff, which was really cool. We don't get that many people up here in northern Maine, so
Yeah, it's my
it was
first
nice to.
time. I really enjoyed Bangor. I loved the
Yeah,
downtown area. It was very cool. Yeah, I stayed in this totally haunted like bed and breakfast.
yeah.
It was, yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing happened, but stuff
That
happens
you know
there.
of,
I
yeah.
could tell. Yeah.
Stuff happens there, exactly. But I mean, you're in New England, so it's kind of like I said, we know the area,
Yeah.
and we get a lot of Boston in that area gets a lot of authors and creators and things like that coming down too. But every once in a while, they decided to trek north. And when
Yeah.
Christopher came up to my brewery did a beer for Nightbirds, and
Oh,
so
it's your, I
yeah,
didn't realize.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was very jealous.
Well, it was funny.
Uh,
So I was
yeah,
listing. That's actually funny how you mentioned that. So I was going through. So we've done 2 beers with Daniel Kraus.
yeah,
Daniel's a good friend, and we did one for Whale Fall, and we did one Pay the Piper. And then I originally was going to do the third literary beer, and I was like, you know what? Let's pick someone from New England that we reach out to, because at least
yeah,
that opportunity is like we sell beer in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. So like we have the opportunity to potentially get beer into shelves and stores and things like that, as well as the possibility of the author
yeah,
coming
yeah.
up to the Bangor area, do a signing and whatever it may be. And so I was looking, and the first thing was your name was the first name on the list. No offense, Christopher, but your name was the first name on the list. And then I realized your book coming out this summer was middle grade, and I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
not think that the publisher or you or anybody would have been
Right.
happy
That
with
probably
that.
would not be appropriate. Yeah.
So
But
if it was a
next year,
different
man,
year, yeah, we can talk
yeah,
about it. It's not an issue there.
yeah, screw Chris. Like, I actually drink beer. Chris
Yes,
does not.
exactly. No,
Actually,
exactly.
I had one, Chris and I did an event in
Hmm.
Plainville in the Diary of the Wimpy Kids bookstore.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote the book owns a
Yeah.
bookstore in Plainville, Mass. An unlikely story. So we're tying everything together here at the end. Yeah, so I had the IPA. I actually still have one in the fridge.
There you go. See,
Yeah.
I got plenty of them somewhere right here. I got a label over here.
Yeah, so the label, well, for next summer, my book
See?
is titled "Dead but Dreaming of Electric Sheep." So
There you go. That'd be a
that's a
great name.
mouthful. That's a
That's a
mouthful to get
great
on the
name for a
label.
beer. What are you
Yeah,
talking about? Yeah, it's a great name for a beer. But no, it's fun, and it's one of those things. And Daniel also drank beer, so it was nice to
yeah,
have that connection. And the original one started because Whale Fall was we have a lot of whales in New England, and
yeah.
so Whale Fall Brewery, and he was on the podcast and we was talking and so on and so forth. The second one was I was really selfish and I wanted to do a beer with the name George A. Romero
George
on it. So
Morrow. Yeah,
that
yeah.
was so
Sure.
Daniel took a backseat on that one. I'm sorry, Daniel, but no. And then we're like, I can't believe he's from Chicago. People are like, why do you keep doing these beers with Daniel Kraus? You're from Maine.
Yeah,
And so I was like, and then I was like, let's do New England and see what we can do. And so
yeah,
Christopher, he was like, thankful he came up here with Clay McLeod Chapman came up
yeah.
as well, and they did a couple events up here and did it. But it was fun, yeah. And it was a cool way of doing it. Obviously the book cover worked well. So yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I said.
no,
And
it was a great looking
your
can. It
name
was a
was
good
first.
beer. Yeah.
Your name was first. I won't, like I said, no offense, Christopher, but your name was first on the list, and I was like, another being a middle grade book. I don't think that will go over very well.
Ginger beer? No, is that alcoholic? Yeah, I don't know.
We do a hop water. We could have done like an
Yeah,
alcoholic hop water on it, but
yeah.
no, I was kind of funny on that. So we'll have a discussion about that in the future. But yeah,
Sweet.
it's a fun thing. I was actually at Christopher's the night before. We did a tasting in New Hampshire
Yeah.
of that, and I was actually at Gibson's,
Nice.
and then
Yeah.
with Eric Donnelly, and then I was gonna come down for the other one, but I was buying my house that
Oh,
morning.
yeah.
So I spent a lot more money
Yeah.
than going to see you. But
Right.
yeah, I was gonna multiple times I've missed you. One of these days we'll get to meet in
One of these
person.
days. Yeah.
But yeah, and I didn't get a chance to again. I just moved, so I wasn't able to go to StokerCon, even though it was in New England. I was really
Yeah.
disappointed with that. So it's going to Pennsylvania next year. So at least it's close enough. Maybe
Yeah.
it's in the cards for next year. But yeah. But another comes out July 22nd at bookstores everywhere. There's
Right.
also an audiobook. Those people who are interested in the audiobook, and I
Will be. Yep.
highly recommend you buy that at Libro.fm. It helps independent bookstores and so on
Yes.
and so forth. If you buy it through our website, we get a little cut too, so that's really nice
Okay.
to help promote it. But also, if you buy it on there, pick your local bookstore. If you're in the Bangor area, we support Briar Patch Books in downtown Bangor. And you can pick your bookstore and things like that. It helps. Bookshop.org is a great place to buy another
Yeah.
the physical print copy of another as well. And they have PDF or EPUB now too, which is really cool too. So if you're like a e-reader kind of person, you can buy that
Mhm.
on bookshop.org now. Cool. If you can't, my biggest thing is buy the book. I love the book. It was great. My whole
Thank you.
thing was like if it's choosing between not buying it on Amazon because you don't want to support Amazon or buying
Yeah.
it on Amazon, buy it on Amazon because you can at least the book gets sold. You know, the publisher sees that it worked and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. So if you're choosing between not buying and buying it, and the only place you want to buy it is Amazon, just do that. But try to buy local if you can.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. Get the book. It's worth it. Pre-ordering it still is worth it. I know we're only a couple weeks away, but still go on and pre-order it because it does help with sales and
Definitely.
the number of copies that each independent bookstore gets and so on and so forth. But yeah, and then obviously the paperback, August 5th, I think is when August 5th
For
is
horror
the
movie, yes.
horror
August
movie is
5th.
the
Yeah.
paperback, of horror movie if you're interested in that book. I got the there you go. That's the red cover.
Yeah, and I'm
red
hoping
frame.
at some point this summer, I'm not quite sure when, but there'll be we're asking for an announcement of what's going on film wise with horror movie
Okay.
because it's very exciting. It's really hard to sort of keep that secret. I mean, it's still a long ways to go before it's a movie, but like
Yeah.
the people who are involved, it's a
Yeah.
dream. It's a
Yeah.
dream sort of lineup. So yeah.
That's really cool. I can't wait to hear more about it. And it'll also be nice to be able to see, like, it's always nice to have your book adapted into a film. Like but it'd be nice to be able to say, like, it's more than just Knock at the Cat. Like it's more than just Cabin at the End of the World. Like it's more going on. And I think I'm excited for this horror movie because it's another way to experience
That's right.
the
You
thing.
squeeze more out of people
Another
who
way
like
to
that
buy.
story.
I'll have to go buy tickets to go see it in the theater. Then I'll have to buy the movie and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. So yeah, I'm excited. So July 22nd is another. Again, it's a middle grade book, more middle grade horror book. But it's really for anybody. If you're an adult and you're listening to this, which most likely is not a middle grade reader listening to this, but if you're an adult and you want to read this, it's really fun. It's an enjoyable experience. It's easy. If you're looking for, like I said, not a lighthearted book, but like a not as dense.
Quicker read. Yeah.
Yes, it's not as dense as some other books can be, and this might be a nice filler if you're like reading a lot of big books and things like that. It'd be good. And if you have a middle grade child, maybe reading it together or something like that is pretty cool. Buy two
Absolutely.
copies though, one for you, one for your kid.
Yeah.
I said that, Paul, not you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to force you to buy two copies. But no, it's really cool. So I'm excited for it to come out July 22nd. And again, horror movie was excellent too. So you want the paperback version of that August 5th. And then obviously more news coming about the movie in the near future. I appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us
My
about
pleasure.
your books and so much more here. We'll definitely get you back on in the future talking about your next novel, maybe a beer collaboration or
Yeah.
something else in the future. It'd be a lot of fun. And maybe one day I'll get to meet you in person.
Yeah. No, well, if you're gonna go to Haverhill, I'll be there in October.
Yeah,
They're doing that
awesome.
Haverhill thing.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. I'll be there for that show this year, hopefully. I mean, barring sickness, you know what it is.
Yeah.
It's always people are like, "What are you gonna do in a couple months?" I'm like, "I don't know, man. As long as my kid's not sick, maybe I'll come." It's just where it is. October is before the cold season, so maybe it'll be fine by then. But yeah. But I do appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. We'll talk to you soon, okay, Paul?
Yeah. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.